Hey everyone, I am Zach Markovitz. Welcome everybody to the Southern Cities Open Data Day. I am very excited to kick you all off today. My name is Zach Markovitz. I am the Vice President of Local Government and the Managing Director of What Works Cities at Results for America. And I am very, very, very excited to be here and help to warm up the day and welcome you for this special occasion. I am also honored to be sharing the virtual stage today with Mayor Andy Burke of Chattanooga, Mayor Sharon Weston Broome of Baton Rouge, Mayor Frank Scott Jr. of Little Rock, and Mayor Jim Strickland of Memphis. I admire them each individually, and then together it's really a force to be reckoned with. And also with the leaders who oversee open data in each of today's represented cities. It is really extraordinary how practitioners and leaders in these 5 cities have come together to celebrate and maximize this moment, honoring the collaboration they've all benefited from so far, and hoping to advance how their cities and all of yours governments together can work together to do even more. I want to just take a moment to special thanks to the cities and organizers who have made this happen. Melissa Bridges in Little Rock, Craig Hodges and Sarah Harris in Memphis, Eric Romero and John Snow in Baton Rouge, Tim Moreland in Chattanooga, and Eric Ogburn in New Orleans. I will mention and embarrass them all a little bit later, but I think it's they really deserve a lot of credit for pulling this together today. These folks have all met because of events like this and wanted to give back to their own cities and to the communities. And events like this are so important because they give us a chance to come together and learn. And in light of our shared challenges, we need to share ideas, to copy, to adapt, to adopt solutions towards advancing collaboration and adopt that from each other. And that's what today is all about. So I encourage you all to share your name and where you're from in the chat, maybe one thing you want to learn or want to connect with, because I think it's really important, and it'll be a note that we continue throughout the conversation this morning. So when data is shared openly, when it's shared transparently, accountability comes naturally. Inputs and outcomes, investments and their results, everything that residents and constituents and everyday people have questions about and how they do their life, a city can answer and can be answered pretty naturally by having open data in place. It's what today is about in some ways. But as you're aware, open data is not just about transparency and accountability, although it may start there. And those are really important goals. It's about organization. It's about better government. It's about better communication between those who serve and those who are being served, and about blurring the lines between those two categories of serve and being served. So what do I mean by that? First, you can have better government without good data. You can't have better government without good data, and you can't do good open data without investing in core data assets. Anyone can throw a few links on a web page. But it requires painstaking work, attention to detail, tough conversations with calcified department heads, and real mayoral leadership to get data together that allows for decisions to be informed by data and residents to know what is happening. Second, cities who invest in open government data and do so completely give residents the ability to robustly collaborate and not only to participate in outcomes that the mayor or city council or commissions are pushing, but really to engage in shared outcomes with City Hall. When fully leveraged, open data creates an opportunity for multilateral conversation and can often provide a critical foundation for cities looking to build trust with their communities, serving as a common ground, a common foundation by which to sort of bat around ideas and figure out a common solution. It's also, and this is important, it enables tough conversations to happen. When the data look bad, there are no ways to really defend what it's saying, and that's hard, but it's harder to avoid those conversations. The only way we solve the big intractable issues of our times, structural and systemic racism, multi-generational poverty, climate change, differential life and health outcomes in our communities, is to integrate our data and have meaningful, open conversations with those who have been in the trenches of our work in our cities and our communities for years, understanding what they see, what it means, how it's reflected in data, and then ultimately engaging in forceful conversations about how to make it better. Knowing this and that accountability, performance, and results are at the core of developing a well-managed cities has put open data and that process at the core of the What Works Cities initiative. What Works Cities that I helped to lead was launched by a series of grants from Bloomberg Philanthropy starting in 2015 and focuses on helping cities across the country use data better, data and evidence better to drive decision-making and to improve the lives of the residents in each of these cities and communities. Results from America that manages and runs What Works Cities strives to advance the use of data and evidence at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. And we know that you can't have a well-functioning government and a well-managed city that use data as a driver of key decisions and outcomes without attention to the openness of that data and the conversation about it that you're having with your residents. As local leaders, you all are the faces that people in cities interact with and rely upon in day-to-day. And you can understand better than most the need for the hard and painstaking work and the outcomes and impact it can deliver. If anything, this pandemic and the series of crisis after crisis has made the demand and appreciation for effective data governance and transparency all the more clear. Whether it's which hospitals and beds have availability if I need to go, where can I find support for Spanish-speaking residents who we need to protect from eviction, where are the non-traditional businesses in my community, and how do I know, and how do I make sure they're protected from collapse? Amidst our overlapping crises, the physical, mental, and economic health of our communities, real-time data usage has become a crushing reality of the day-to-day demands for all of us and for our cities. Thankfully, I am thankful, there are people like all of you who make this easier, who make community data easy to get and easy to understand. The ETLs that you jerry-rigged, the data sets you've recoded, the data, the dashboards that you create, the visualizations your residents can access, the dashboards that you recreate, they have saved lives in recent months. And you should be impressed and proud of everything that you do to further advance engagement, to support your communities and proactively use data. So what's next? We no longer have to look back necessarily just evaluating what was. We have the unique opportunity to lean forward and to use data to solve the most innovative and advanced problems today. And that's what today is about. But I'd love to take a moment to take a step back and look back here. Being invited to, as I said, speak here today and to open up this really important open data day is extra special for me. And so if you would all indulge me for a second, each of the host cities today have a real special place in the history of the work and the developing work that What Works Cities, this national initiative, has engaged with. And in my heart in particular, I can remember my first conversations with Tim Moreland and then Mike in Chattanooga, as well as discussing with Mayor Burke his vision for what the future of open data could look like. Less than a year after he signed an executive order making open data a priority for all Chattanooga departments. Since then, what has been created in terms of the chat box and the inventory and the use of lean on the process has been really extraordinary. I also separately just maintain that Chatadata is probably the best named open data site out there. And so, everyone else can compete against that. 6 years ago, I know that open data and connecting with residents felt like a dream for the committed folks in Little Rock. And I know Melissa and the team there could oftentimes felt, like a little bit of an island from the key folks who've been driving success around the country. Just launching a policy was a heavy lift, but you pan forward to today, and things like Citizen Connect in Little Rock that connects things like 311 requests, the police crime data, planning permits, housing and neighborhood programs in one sort of easy place for citizens and neighbors to access is an amazing opportunity to allow people to understand in their backyard, around their home and their business at any point in time. I remember speaking with Eric and John in Baton Rouge right around the time that Mayor Weston Broome came into office, discussing how with this new and really exciting administration, they could take this advanced local system to bring it to kind of a national acclaim. At the time, the city was really reeling from the August 2016 Great Flood that had devastated so much of the community that they were serving. And they were really laser focused on how they could use their open data prowess to help the city understand the challenges and how they could beneficially affect the recovery. And you can take a look at the 2016 flood Esri story map to see history of that event and like sort of how they've really developed that process. And even today, their ability to open up their budget books through their open budget BR and to think about how they manage expectations inside and outside the city parish government, that they were serious about open data and the benefits the approach takes to the improvement of their community and their lives. Back in 2016, we were getting started. I remember working with the team in Memphis who had some open data work, but I remember working with Craig and the team there to think about how to turn the shallow waters of this program into a deep pool. It started with a comprehensive policy data governance plan, but it led to so much more. And now, and I pushed from Mayor Strickland, they are a What Works City certified city, meaning they're one of the few 25 cities across the country, 24 cities across the country who are managing data in the most effective way possible. I know all 5 cities here who haven't, even if they haven't been certified, are well on their path to getting there. And speaking of certified cities, the city of New Orleans has always been a leader in this space. But I remember speaking to Eric back in 2015 about the goals of this program and how it can be a tool to address and solve some of the biggest challenges of what the city faced. Now through datadriven.nola.gov, you can have a comprehensive suite, and you have my dog here. A comprehensive suite of how the city and parish uses data to tackle the most pressing issues of the day. And I would encourage you to go to datadriven.nola.gov to see how you can marry open data with analytics, with training and insights and covering all the issues that New Orleanians care about. What's really exciting is that these people and these teams and their success overall, they came about in some cases through events like this one. Getting to know each other, call each other out, bounce ideas off each other, and serve as an affinity group for the next phase of this work. This day is time to spend it. So please, again, connect with each other. Open data and the open data movement is evolving, and it serves as a starting point for a well-managed city. Like the data inventory that starts it, it's a foundation for building out the data capacity that leads to the future of urban innovation. And whereas the movement started as a government and transparency focused, as I sort of mentioned at the top, the current phase of open data is resident and community centered. It's participatory. It's grounded in developing tools and data sets and actions and stories that put people at the center of the needs to be met and the choices that are to be made. The 5 cities convening here in this group, and many of you, not in those cities, but outside, are doing that now and have worked hard over the past years to get there. That is so exciting. That's an exciting part of this. And I would encourage you to ask the hosts, their mayors that are going to be joining us in a second, and the staff, many of whom were in their cities when open data, this whole idea was nothing but a dream, a hope, and a vision for the future of urban governance. The good thing is that I and we at What Works Cities can also help accelerate that dream and that drive. It has really been a pleasure, both personally, and I know all the team at What Works Cities and Results America feel this way too, to work with all 5 cities hosting today, to connect them to each other and to connect the mayors to each other and leaders across the country. And if you're new and you're in a city that hasn't participated in What Works Cities, I encourage you to go to whatworkscities.org and take a What Works Cities assessment, serving as a tool to benchmark your city practices. And taking this assessment, you become a part of the What Works Cities network with Baton Rouge and Memphis, New Orleans, Chattanooga, and the team cities across the country. They automatically have access to tons of free trainings, courses, technical assistance opportunities, and great events like this. I know you'll see all those folks there. And it begins a journey that each of the host cities have gone on to build a stronger and more data-informed city for your residents. So just ask their events, the host of today's event. But now enjoy a great day. Make sure you, again, connect with many people as possible. It's what makes these days so important. And I will now take the moment to introduce your moderators for today's panels. Terry Takai, the former CIO and of the U.S. Department of Defense and the current Executive Director of the Center for Digital Government. And Phil Bertolini, the former Chief Innovation Officer of Oakland County, Michigan, and the current co-director of the Center for Digital Government. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Mayors, I'm excited to hear from you and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Zach. Thank you for all that and opening up the panel for today. We really appreciate it. So what I would like to do, my name is Phil Bertolini. I'm the co-director of the Center for Digital Government. And I've had the wonderful good fortune of being in public service for 31 years. I was the Deputy County Executive and CIO in Oakland County, Michigan. My partner, Terry Takai, is the co-director of the Center for Digital Government, and she was the former CIO of the state of Michigan, the state of California, and the Department of Defense. So we work together to work with governments across the nation to talk about best practices and engage, and that's what the Center for Digital Government does. Puts people together so we can have the right discussions. So what I'd like to do is get this panel started. So I'm going to go ahead and do a brief bio on each of our mayors, and then we're going to get the discussion started. So I'd like to start with Baton Rouge, Mayor Sharon Weston Broome. Mayor Broome is the first female mayor president of the city of Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. She previously served as the Baton Rouge Metro City Council member, a Louisiana state representative, and a Louisiana state senator. While serving in the legislature, Mayor Broome became the first woman to hold the leadership positions of Speaker Pro Tem in the House and the President Pro Tem in the Senate. Now, since taking office, Mayor Broome has placed a heavy focus on improving the quality of life for citizens while building resiliency through infrastructure improvements. Her administration has taken a data-driven approach in addressing transportation, drainage, public safety, education, economic development, and neighborhood revitalization. So we're honored to have Mayor Broome with us. Next, I'd like to introduce Mayor Andy Burke from Chattanooga. Mayor Burke was born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He served as state senator for Tennessee's 10th district from 2007 to 2012, before becoming the 65th mayor of Chattanooga in 2013. As mayor, he is focused on growing the local economy, ensuring every child has the opportunity to succeed, and making Chattanooga's streets safer and neighborhoods stronger. Chattanooga is known as the gig city, and Mayor Burke has worked to maximize its high-speed fiber optic infrastructure. American City and County Magazine named him Municipal Leader of the Year for innovative initiatives such as Baby U and Tech Goes Home, the city's efforts in ending veterans' homelessness, as well as for his leadership during a 2015 domestic terror attack. Welcome, Mayor Burke. Next, we have Mayor Frank Scott Jr. from Little Rock. Little Rock voters made history on December 4th, 2018, when they selected Frank Scott Jr. as the city's 73rd mayor and first elected Black chief executive. Since that day, Mayor Scott has worked to unite Little Rock's diverse neighborhoods into one city and one people, cooperating to expand the economy and improve the quality of life. He is an ardent champion of data-driven decision-making, overseeing Little Rock's advancements in open data that continue to positively impact quality of life throughout the community. He and his team serve daily. So welcome, Mayor Scott. We have the mayor of Memphis, Mayor Jim Strickland. Jim Strickland was sworn in as mayor of Memphis for a second term on January 1st, 2020, with a continued pledge to reinvest in neighborhoods, in citizens, and to keep growing the economy. While practicing with Kutzoff and Strickland PLLC, he was elected to the Memphis City Council in 2007 and is chairman in 2014. Community service has long been a part of Mayor Strickland's life. He served with various organizations, including St. Vincent de Paul Soup Kitchen, where he still volunteers and holds a Gold Life membership with the NAACP. Mayor Strickland is married with 2 children. Welcome, Mayor Strickland. And then we're going to have Mayor Latoya Cantrell from New Orleans. She was going to join us today, but she had a last-minute conflict and couldn't be here. She will definitely be missed. So mayors, let's get this conversation started if we could. And I'd like to go to Mayor Strickland if I could to start this. You know, given the recent crisis and the need to provide information to your citizens, where have you utilized this data to communicate important messages? How have you done that in your city?
Sorry, forgot to unmute myself there. Well, two ways for COVID-19 is we decided, just like other data, we're going to put it all out there. And the number of people taking tests, our case rate, all this information. Obviously, we use social media. We had a pre-existing relationship with Nextdoor. So over 100,000 Memphians get our routine messages there. We have multiple press conferences every week, and we literally go over that data because, you know, I said from the very get-go, we're going to follow the data and follow the science. But if you show the data, I think it gets buy-in. And I'm really proud of Memphis and our whole county. By midsummer, wearing masks had become the norm. Yeah, we did pass an ordinance requiring it, but it had become the norm because I think, I'm not saying the data was 100% of the reason, it was not, but it was part of the reason building this coalition of people who believed in data and believed in the science. And then I want to use one example of data on animal services. The dog was barking earlier. Because, and I'm sure this is the case with everyone, because of the pandemic, we have to have fewer people in our animal shelter because they can't work side by side. So that means we have to have fewer dogs and animals. So when the public heard that we were going to bring in fewer animals, they didn't, some of them didn't like it. They thought it was dangerous. So we did a deep dive into the data in late summer, early fall, and figured out that the number of dog attacks had not gone up in the public, and that stray dogs were only 0.41 miles away from their house. When they were found, they were only 0.41 miles from their house. So we used instead of taking that dog from near their house all the way out to the shelter and then back to the house, we worked with the neighborhood to try to immediately return the dog instead of going to our shelter, which freed up space, which freed up humans having to work side by side.
You know, Mayor, it's so amazing that they were that close to home.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and with data, you can figure that out, right? I mean, you were able to know that based on where you were picking up different animals. So that's amazing.
And then I think that got some buy-in from the public that this change of policy was not going to endanger their lives and actually may serve them better.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Mayor. Mayor Broome, I'd like you to come in on that same question if you could. How are you using data to communicate with your citizens and do the work of city government?
Well, I will tell you that we recognized early on how much collaboration and data sharing would be required to support an effective response to the pandemic specifically, including with agencies with which we had minimal history of sharing data, like our Louisiana Department of Health, which has led the state's COVID-19 response. And so how Baton Rouge is constantly in the crosshairs of other disaster or emergency situations, as you well know, like hurricanes and storms. So we do have a strong track record of working effectively with other agencies during times of crisis, including sharing and distributing data-driven messages to our residents. And so our data team has developed a series of dashboards used internally, for example, as we've navigated the pandemic by our local hospital administrators. My office and other stakeholders use this to guide key decisions, like when we were establishing our COVID-19 testing sites. And so we also used and provided this data to our residents via social media, traditional media, and even platforms like Nextdoor to help them better understand parish level metrics and trends, as well as data on healthcare resources for those impacted by the coronavirus, such as available hospital beds, ICU beds, and ventilators. And so we believe without this coordinated approach to data sharing during a pandemic, we would have lacked access to key information and real-time trends that would become critical in how my team and I made decisions to serve our citizens, and then quickly communicated those decisions through a variety of platforms.
So Mayor, it had to be interesting too, as in how important that data was to make accurate decisions and timely decisions, right? I mean, you just couldn't wait to get information out. Information needed to get out to the public. So having that data had to be very important.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That data was important. And I can tell you, we had a daily call at the beginning of the pandemic with our area elected officials. I conducted the call, and every day we were sharing data with other elected officials. So it would not only help me in guiding my decisions, but these other elected officials were responsible for constituencies as well. And it did help us to collaboratively work together. One thing I've noticed though, the more we get into a data-driven environment, the more there is request for data in making decisions from other external sources like other elected officials who represent different areas.
You know, people get hungry for the data once they have
Absolutely.
it, then they can mash that data together to get some really interesting results.
Yes.
Yeah. Mayor, thank you for that. So Mayor Scott, I'd like you to come in now if you could.
Yes, how are you?
Great. Thanks for being here.
Well, one of the things as it relates to data that we're continuing to remain focused on here at the City of Little Rock. First, I just want to give a shout out to Melissa Bridges, who's truly been the trendsetter for our city. And since we've been in office now 26 months, we've realized whether it was a 500-year flood, a global pandemic that none of us seen before, or recently here in Little Rock, we don't experience snowstorms. And so we've had a snowstorm over the last couple of weeks, and it really highlights the need, while there is a need for open data. But more than just to highlight, it's something that our residents come to expect. And so one of the things that we've been able to accomplish in working with What Works Cities as well as Results for America is getting our city ingrained in open data. And we've made a lot of strides over the last 5 years. We've been in office now 26 months. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is utilize data to highlight one of our biggest priorities in our administration, which is focusing on the unserved and underserved as it relates to infrastructure projects, social services, education, and any type of service that is front-facing with the City of Little Rock. And so we've been able to tie that data to demonstrate the policy need and the policy rationale to make certain decisions. So we're following the data. Whether it's for our infrastructure projects to ensure that we have equitable sidewalks, and whether or not we have equitable response time when we see potholes, and the same as it relates with picking up trash. And because many times we have communities that feel, and sometimes the data demonstrates that it's accurately true, that they're not receiving the best service. And so that's one of the things that we've tried to change as a result, and focusing on data.
Mayor Scott, thank you for that. You know, it's interesting. I'm based up in Michigan, so we take the cold for granted up here. And when, you know, and I have family that in Texas and other places, and they didn't own snow shovels. I mean, the infrastructure was not there to manage the cold and the snow, but you all did an incredible job keeping your citizens safe. Did data play a role in that for you? Were you able to get the data you needed to help them through that crisis?
Yes, data played a huge role in where we went and as it relates to the routes that we took, but also sharing with individuals, okay, hey, when someone would call and say, well, we need to get some snow picked up, or we're on our way, or we were just there, and we were able to track that type of data. But also in the same vein, it helped us show some of our blind spots where we could to show that information real time versus kind of after the fact. And I think that's where I go back to residents now in our ever evolving information technology world, is they're beginning to expect more from local government. And that's another reason why we're happy to be partnership with What Works Cities.
Excellent. Mayor, thank you for that. Mayor Burke, I'd like you to come in as well on this question and talk about data and how you use that for your information and decision making.
Well, first of all, we really try to build a culture of data. That was, you know, Mayor Scott is talking about being on the job 26 months. I've been on the job now 95 months. So y'all are making me feel old on here. And it's great, you know, Mayor Strickland is a phenomenal mayor on the other side of the state, Mayor Weston Broome. I got to spend a few minutes with her. I went down to Baton Rouge a couple years ago, and Mayor Scott is known as a true up-and-comer in the mayor world. You know, I'm listening to people who really understand how to use this, but particularly when I became mayor, what Work City hadn't even been invented yet. You know, we were kind of on the forefront, and we wanted to figure out how we put together an open data culture. So, you know, we started the open data and performance management team. We call it OpMod because everything in government has to have, you know, some kind of acronym. And then every month, you know, we have Chattadata, and points to Zach for saying it properly. It's not Chattadata, it is Chattadata. That is the right way to pronounce it. We have a citywide meeting. Every administrator shows up. We go through all the numbers. That's one way we do it. Second way is that when it comes budget time, we go through what performance has been. We have a budgeting for outcomes process. We use data as part of that. And so at the level of administrators and kind of executive personnel, we try to build that culture every day. But then the second piece to this is we also want to make sure that frontline staff are figuring out how they use data as well. And so we have things like the Peak Academy, which we run every few months, that brings in frontline staff and helps them figure out how they use data to become more efficient in the jobs that they do. And just like Mayor Weston Broome and Mayor Strickland and Mayor Scott, you know, we see the results every day. We see it in the services that we provide through public works that we just do on a daily basis, but also, you know, when the pandemic hits, if you've built that kind of culture, then you start looking at, okay, what are the zip codes where you don't see vaccine or testing being done? How do we alter where the sites are? How do we make sure that our information is getting to the right people? That culture is very important because, as Mayor Scott said, when you have a 500-year flood and that's not something that you have every day, the organization has got to respond. And it's only going to respond with data if that's the culture that you built.
So Mayor, you know, it's interesting. You talked about efficiency, and I couldn't agree more that data creates that efficiency. But I only can imagine that when you pushed all your staff out remote because of COVID, how important data had to become in that process to make sure they were still delivering services. That had to be a tough situation for you.
Yeah, we look at the dashboards every day. That's something that is part of our culture. And as we got farther away, you know, one thing that Zoom and other video platforms has done is it's made people more data driven, I think, on these things, because when we get together, we need to be efficient. We need to get our facts out. And certainly city government, as everybody has said, the demands of the last year between, you know, the calls for racial justice, between the COVID-19 health pandemic, between the ramifications for our economy, and trying to figure out where businesses are closing and what we're seeing in the data about economics. We don't have a minute to spare. We don't have a dollar to waste. We don't have, you know, any room for misses.
Excellent, Mayor. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to pivot a little bit, if I could, with the panel. And Mayor Broome, I'd like to start with you, if I could, too. That, you know, sharing across government lines is so important, and collaboration is important. I think we might have just lost Mayor Broome real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot. Mayor Strickland, I'm going to come to you, okay? So, you know, the ability to work between states and local government. And I was a county guy, and then I did a lot of work with states and cities, villages, and townships in my county. But are you able to share that data across government lines? And have you found ways to build those relationships to deal with that data sharing?
You still want me or Mayor Broome first?
I'll go with you, Mayor Strickland, and then I'll come back to Mayor Broome.
That's good. The answer is yes, to a degree. I'm going to brag on cities and cities mostly, and counties to a lesser degree. We share data. We get compile data and share data much more than any level of government. It's not even close. And but we have a good relationship with Shelby County, which is our county, and the state of Tennessee. So we get what we need for sure. Like most cities and counties, we created a joint task force to respond to COVID. And then through that process, it's a constant sharing of data, because in Tennessee, the health department is run by the county government. So they're the ones who compile most of the data. But through this joint task force, we combined and shared it, and then we're putting it out together. The joint task force is the one who's having the press conferences that I talked about earlier. So it has worked really well during COVID. And I feel very proud of that joint effort. Well, I was going to answer another question, but I'll leave it there and let these other mayors talk.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Broome, we lost you there on the screen a little bit, so I'm glad you're back. But what I'd like to ask you is that the same question. You know, state and local governments need to work together, right? States, counties, and local and cities. They need to work together. Have you found a way to build those relationships, and have you found a way to share data across those government lines?
Absolutely. You know, as I shared earlier, we do have a track record of working across those government lines. And that was made due to our local response to the pandemic. Those lines of communication and working across those government lines became even much more effective. I will tell you, since I took office, we have prided ourselves on our ability to proactively build relationships with all agencies and stakeholders. You know, we recognize that it often takes a team effort well beyond our organization to address challenges or solve problems, certainly in our community. And internally, as part of our data policy, we have established a data governance committee that includes representatives from our city parish departments. And this committee meets regularly to identify and move key data sets along for publishing to our open data portal. And as well as we coordinate across our departments on the problems or challenges that data sharing can help to solve, including among departments that may not regularly work together. So I would say that my team and I are certainly focused on collaborating and communicating effectively with other agencies, as well as the citizens we serve. In nearly all of these interactions, this coordination, of course, is driven or supported by data.
And Mayor, the relationship between the parish and the city has to be interesting as well, right? Because it takes nurturing to grow that. Do you find that the governments work seamlessly, or do you see there is sometimes a struggle to get the data you need?
Well, I will tell you here, of course, since we have a consolidated form of government here, we can navigate that. But being in the capital city, I will tell you that we have an excellent relationship with state government. So while there may be a few bumps in the road, I would say that overall it is definitely a great data sharing experience, or positive data sharing experience, between our state partners as well, and other entities within the city that make up the framework and fabric of our community.
Mayor, thank you for that. Mayor Burke, I'd like to bring you in on this question as well. So the whole issue of working with the state, working with local government, how's that working for you? And are you able to share data across those lines?
It's a challenge. I think for us, we should be honest, and you know, I think the whole system, particularly during COVID, has strained between, you know, in our community. You know, we have the feds, particularly in the 2020, having one point of view, the state having a different, the county having a different, and the city here having a fourth. And so pulling all those pieces together has just been a struggle in our federalist system, and we should acknowledge that. And part of that has been that it's hard to get the data sharing that you want when that happens. And so you have some places where it works well. Right now, we're working with the county on sharing eviction data, for example. We've got a lot of information out there about vaccines at zip code level. We're putting that together. But then there are places where it just really should work better, and it doesn't work nearly well enough. And I think figuring that out in the long run, the collaborative pieces, is tough. But let's also acknowledge that it's tough because of politics. It goes way beyond data. It's about these long-term relationships, and we have to nurture those. And perhaps there are some points where the data can be a bridge to help that, and to make sure that we're at least talking about the same things, that we're working on the same problems, because sometimes that disconnect can really be a problem and hurt our ability to provide services to residents.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Scott, I'd like to bring you in on that same question. How are you working with state and being with state and local government in the collaboration on data?
Well, Little Rock is much like Mayor Broome. It's a bit unique because we're the state capital city in Arkansas. Arkansas happens to be a small state. Little Rock happens to be the largest city in the small state, and we are where the seat of government power is located. So inherently, there is a strong relationship as it relates to personal, interpersonal communication between state agencies and local agencies. But there are, I think what we saw, or what we have seen rather, in the wake of the pandemic is where we are working very hard to work on our data, but also understanding there were opportunities for improvement as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic and how we were tracking active cases and things of that nature. Whereas, as Mayor Strickland shared, it's a bit different where the county government is where the Department of Health's kind of seat of power in Memphis, in that Tennessee area. Whereas in Arkansas, we just have the Arkansas Department of Health. And so our county government, our city government does not directly deal with it. And so initially they were not releasing city data. And so when they did begin to release city data, it was a couple weeks lag time. And so that was one of the reasons why we convened a Little Rock COVID-19 task force, because in addition to being the seat of government power, we also the healthcare mecca in the state of Arkansas. And so we brought together all of our healthcare CEOs, COOs, and chief medical officers together to kind of help us identify the data and the science that we needed so we can make early, aggressive, and assertive decisions. And that's the reason why we led the state in our mask mandate, shutting down restaurants to curbside delivery and online service, as well as understanding that from the restaurant standpoint that we wanted to utilize planning activities that when these restaurants had to go from 100% to 0% capacity to open up their restaurants to be creative grocery store boutiques. And so to ensure that we were able to still focus on not hurting them from an economic perspective, because at the end of the day, we want them to sell as much as possible, because we as cities live and die on sales tax revenue. And so it's definitely, we have great communication from interpersonal, personal, but from a data standpoint, we definitely see when the pandemic, when we're out of the pandemic, and we hope that soon, that will be one of the after action items that we'll want to strengthen the interoperability of data exchanging between local governments and the state, particularly within the Department of Health.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. And there was discussion earlier about culture, and that's where I want to pivot next. The whole culture of how data is ingrained in the process. And if we had this discussion 10 years ago, I'm sure we'd be talking differently, wouldn't we? I mean, data was there, but it wasn't as easily accessible, or the tools weren't there to put it together. So Mayor Broome, I'd like to come back to you. And while I want to talk about culture, first I want to say, I've worked with Eric Romero. You have an excellent person on your team there that really understands this stuff, and it's such a great joy to work with him. But Mayor Broome, culture, let's talk about culture. Is data, the open data and the use of data, is it ingrained in your culture, or do you still feel at times you have to wing it a bit when you're making decisions?
Well, I will tell you, it's beginning to be ingrained in our culture. Changing the culture of an organization with nearly 5,000 employees is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so over the past 4 years since I've been mayor and working with our rock star, Eric Romero, we've made considerable and continued progress in how our departments and their teams adopt a mindset of data-driven decision-making. And we have made some we have some amazing leaders in our administration, and we really have a great workforce across our departments. And so our departments, those leaders are doing a great job of buying into the concept of data-driven decision-making and implementing it in each of their organizations. I have to tell you, we reiterate it all the time, data, data, data. So it's becoming part of the fabric of our city parish government. Of course, we still have employees who I would say still wing the decisions that they make on their decades of experience and less on data. But in their defense, up until several years ago, they didn't have access to the level of data or systems or dashboards that make true data-driven decision making a possibility today. So, I will say that these employees are rapidly becoming a smaller group in our city parish government because they see each and every day how data can be used to make their work more efficient, more effective, and even safer.
It's amazing to see the transformation on people's faces when they start to see the power of data and what they can do. Mayor, thank you for sharing that. Mayor Scott, I want to go with you next, if I could. Same question. Do you find that your culture of data use is growing and that it's getting more ingrained, or do you still feel like you're winging it a bit at times? Mayor, you're on mute.
I think one of the things with Melissa on the line today, and just to ensure that I'm being as transparent as possible, we definitely have some department directors that are doing a great job at data, and then some that definitely need some more improvement. And one of the things and that's the reason why, and having some conversations with Melissa, and then two, clearly the leader has to open his or her eyes to the data and really embrace it as well. And so that's one of the things I think Melissa would share, that we've been trying to push so much in increasing that, much so as we kind of start each year in our administration. We start with the organizational theme. The first year was organizational change. The second year was performance management and training. And so this third year, we're focused on the 3 C's. And that's customer service, communication, and cementing change through execution. And we're able to really focus on customer service and that cementing change through execution through data. And so that's the reason why one of the early things before our administration, Melissa initially created this city stat process, where we take one of our cabinet level meetings that all the department directors do is focus on data. To really, one, create more of this accountability and alignment, but also really just have dedicated time to focus on data from a policy perspective and an operational excellence perspective. And so that's one of the reasons why we're restarting that. And I think too, it'll be a bit different because it's being instigated because the mayor's office is focused on it. And so that's one of the reasons why I definitely want to continue to apply Melissa, because you get this feel that she was kind of on her own in an island, and that's one of the reasons why we want to continue to invest in her and kind of help her move from an office of 1 to an office of 5 or 6 or 7, rather than utilizing our data coordinators from each individual department. But this year, we're also focusing on creating data being a part of the performance metric for the department directors to help them understand that we mean business, and this is not something that we're going to wing, but we make it a way of life.
Well said, Mayor. Thank you for that. Mayor Strickland, I'd like you to come in next, if I could, on that same question. Is the culture there? Is it ingrained, or are you still winging it?
Well, I've been mayor for a little over 5 years, so it's much more ingrained. But it takes a couple things. First of all, you have to hire really good people to be in charge, and like Mayor Scott said, give them the the resources to succeed. Sarah Harris, who runs our operation, is a superstar, and her predecessor, Craig Hodges, was a superstar too. And they built a team that's really doing good. Then the leader, me, has to like enforce it. We, I think like Mayor Burke, we meet every month and we put the data up on a wall and we go over it, which by the way, that alone helps. Seeing it, it's almost like, you know, I'm trying to lose weight right now. Every morning when you step on that scale, that's an eye-opening experience. So, I mean, it holds you accountable. Just putting the data up on the wall holds us accountable. Now, you have to also go by your personality. I was a trial lawyer before I became mayor, and when you present to a jury, you have to be yourself. I can't model myself after somebody who's got more charisma or more outgoing. And when CompStat was first started in New York, I've read about it, and you know, these police upper brass would just get in the face of these precinct commanders and yell at them and scream. That's not my personality. So what we do is when we see performance that needs to be improved, we just do a deep dive. And I meet sometimes on a weekly basis with the team. I've done that with police hiring and recruitment. I've done that with the garbage collection. Just meet every week and try to and give them the resources to succeed. And one last thing, it's not only become ingrained in the culture of city government, I think it's become ingrained in the culture of Memphis. The public now expects the data, which is really good. Last summer, Mayor Burke mentioned the civil unrest and the call for racial justice. As part of reimagining policing here in Memphis, the public wanted to see more transparency on use of force data. And it was all open records, but it was very hard to decipher. So we've created, just in the last month, I mean, it took us 6 months to create, to do a really good job of it, but we've created a portal that really shows publicly our use of force data. And that's all goes back to this ingrained culture in the city of Memphis. We want more transparency and we want more data.
Very well said, Mayor. Thank you. Mayor Burke, same question for you.
Well, you know, I've got all this gray hair because I said I've been around 95 months now, and I agree with everything that has been said before. We really have built a culture. Mayor, I can't agree more with what Mayor Strickland said. If you put all of your administrators around a table every month for 8 years, and with the mayor there, it changes how people think about the importance of that activity. And so I think we've done it. We've really made huge strides. And I'll give you an example where people don't usually think of this, is that our fire chief, sometimes fire departments are not always known for being the most progressive out there in what they're doing. They were really struggling with some medical calls, and which we call 554 calls. And they would just have these frequent flyers over and over and over again. So working with the data team, they figured out, you know, kind of where those pockets were, started an initiative with social workers to try to take that time-consuming, very expensive stuff off their plate, because they had people who were calling 3 times a day, every day for a month, and using data to start to figure out how to not only deal with those, but also get ahead of the problem, see where they could start seeing problems. So we definitely have that. Now, let me also, I always try to be honest, because I think anybody who paints too rosy a scenario on anything, I never trust them. So I'm always going to try to be honest and say, you know, I think we've done a great job of building a culture where we gather data, where we think about data, where we discuss data. It's always hard to make a decision on data when it's telling you something that you don't want to hear. And we're going to struggle with that, and people are going to struggle with that. And that's the place where there's room for improvement. It's like, the data is telling us something, we don't want to hear it, but it's telling us this every month. So now what are we going to do about that? I think building that culture is always going to be a struggle.
Yeah. Excellent point. Thank you, Mayor.
Hey, Phil,
Yes.
can I add one thing?
You bet.
To follow up, when you put the data up on the wall, and I'll give you one example. We measure how long it takes each division to pay their bills. And I've forgotten what standard we use, but whatever it is. And then we rank the divisions. And there's become this friendly competition among, and some smack talk going on at the meetings about who's in last place. And several months ago, our finance division was in last. And our poor chief financial officer, she was ridiculed. And I guarantee the next month, they were not in last place.
Yeah, I can only imagine the back and forth that took place on that, Mayor. All right, mayors, this world has been very different over this last year. So many different aspects of the economy, the environment. You know, we talk about social justice, all the different things that have happened over this last period, especially with the pandemic. Do you believe that the data is helping your communities trust you more because the communications you're providing are based on fact and data? And then the second part of that question is, where do you see the future of your data program going? I want to start with Mayor Scott. Mayor Scott, do you think your public trusts you more with the data that you're using for your communications? And where do you see the future of open data going for your community?
Well, it's good to kind of give a brief background. I think historically, the city of Little Rock, particularly from the city leadership perspective, had not communicated as much as we are communicating. I think that has a lot to do with our style as administration, and then particularly being a millennial mayor, we are constantly communicating. And so then once we kind of came into office and then became more aware of the work of our performance and innovation coordinator with Melissa, we started incorporating more of the data in our communications. So that being said, I think we are in the right direction, both coupled with communication and now this infusement of data in the same vein, which now means that it creates more expectation for more data in the communication to really demonstrate, okay, here's XYZ that's happening in the city, whether it's an infrastructure project, whether it has something to do with code enforcement, or now with our community schools model, and showing that data, not only just communicating what's going on, but how impactful it is, but because we're now studying the data to help make future decisions. So I definitely think we're in the right direction. And as we move forward, it's just the expectation that there's more information on local government's web pages and their social media strategy and all courses of mediums of communication. And so I think that is the new standard. And each city is going to be graded upon how open the data platform is, how interoperable it is, and how does it reach not only from a data-driven policy-making decision, but how easy and user-friendly can it be that any resident, no matter where they are on a socioeconomic status and or understanding, can not only access the data, but ascertain the data to ensure they're a more well-informed resident. And that we, our cities, are doing right by our customers, which are the residents.
Very well said, Mayor. Thank you. Mayor Strickland, same question to you. Do you think the data, using the data in your communications and having more accurate data, is that helping with the public trust and the reputation with the public? And then where do you see your data program moving forward?
Well, I think the first part is absolutely yes. And I think Mayor Burke hit on something that's very important. None of us can be everything's great, everything's perfect, because the public knows it's not, and you lose credibility. But the way the great thing about data is it's truthful, and it shows your warts and all, and you ought to be truthful about warts. I'll give you an example. Our 911 call times, call response to just answering the phone were terrible. And the public knew they were terrible. So we measured it. We tell the public what the problem is. They already know it, but we quantify it. And then we say, this is our plan to fix it. And then as time goes on and we improve it, hopefully, then you're honest with them and you put that data up, and it does build faith in in government, and I think build faith in your city. And just one example, when I ran for office the first time in 2015, 2/3 of Memphis thought Memphis was heading the wrong direction. When I ran for re-election in 2019, 2/3 thought we were heading the right direction. I'm not saying data is the only reason. I'm not saying I'm the only reason. Obviously, a good economy and all that stuff helped. But I think data really had a big difference in being honest about it. These are our problems. This is what the data shows, and the data is pointing us to fix it this way.
Mayor, thank you for that. Mayor Burke, same question to you. Is the data and having accurate data helping with your communications with the public? And where do you see the future of your data program heading?
Yeah, absolutely, it helps. And I'll go back. Mayor Strickland was talking about this earlier. We had been when the calls for racial justice were really started to get loud last spring, and we were seeing protests in our city every night. We'd actually been working for a long time on a racial equity dashboard for policing, and it caused us to ramp up our work on it and put it out. And we were able to get it out pretty quickly because this has been something we had been working on for a while. And not only that, but we did some context around it. So we put together some community groups to talk about what the data said and what it meant, and put it in context. And Mayor Strickland was talking about the polling of what people saw. I used the poll of my mom. My mom actually called me up and was like, when we put out the policing and racial equity dashboard, and she called me up and she was like, "This is such a good thing. Like, I'm so happy that you did it." And for my mom to be thinking and paying attention to that, and first of all, it's great that she was paying attention to racial equity and policing, not something necessarily my mom had dealt with much in her life. Second thing is she was paying attention to it on a data basis. That was really good. And the most important thing that local government has is trust. Like, people don't really trust the federal government. They're not really sure what the state government does a lot of times. The place where they're looking for solutions is the local government, because that's the only place where they trust, and we can't lose that. We cannot lose that. And so Tim Moreland in our office does an incredible job with our OpMod. He's the head of the Office of Performance Management and Open Data. And I think continuing to talk not just about the things that we traditionally talk about, the performance pieces, but these larger problems like racial equity and income inequality and difference between how people of color are getting access to healthcare and things like vaccines. I think you're going to continue to see the demand for these next level type issues that give people a true analysis of what their city's like.
Mayor, thank you for that. Mayor Broome, same question to you. Do you think that accurate data is helping you in regard to communicating with the public? And then where do you see the future of your data program headed?
So let me start out first, Phil, by saying that I'm a communicator by nature. I'm not an attorney. My background is in communications. And so I like to think of myself as the communications mayor. And certainly, I believe that the open data is an effective tool in building public trust and in the communications process. Since I've been mayor and I'm going into my 5th year, I have consistently told my team and have made it a part of the fabric of our administration, transparency, the word transparency. And it's one thing, however, to say that we're transparent, but the data and information the public needs to either make decisions or understand our decisions have made, the decisions that we make sometimes historically has been difficult or impossible to access. Now, it's an entirely different thing to say we're transparent while we're pointing to the dozens and dozens of data sets and millions of data records that are out there 24/7, 365 days for the public to freely access. You know, I will tell you some of the positive feedback we have received, and I recognize data is a tool to certainly tell us where we are and where we need to improve. But I will tell you from the public poll of our data sharing that our constituents have been extremely impressed that we have open checkbook, that they can see every penny we spend in city parish government. You know, we just implemented the largest infrastructure project in the history of Baton Rouge. We've established a dashboard for that almost $1 billion initiative with projects where you can see how much money we're spending, when we're spending, what's getting ready to happen in your neighborhood. So I certainly do believe that good data and facts certainly helps build the trust with the citizens in our community. And I believe that this mindset has helped us build a tremendous amount of credibility, as I gave you the example with our open checkbook with our community, and shows how serious that we are when it comes to being transparent with our citizens.
Mayor, thank you for that. And we're almost out of time. We're in the last minute or so. So I want to do one thing. Mayors, this is going to be the toughest question I'm going to ask. You ready? I need one word you want to leave this audience with in regard to your passion for open data. I'm going to start with Mayor Strickland. Mayor Strickland, one word.
That describes my my interest in data.
Yeah, your passion for data. One word.
Enthusiastic.
There you go. Mayor Scott.
Accountability.
Accountability. Mayor Burke.
Trust.
Trust. Mayor Broome.
Determination.
Determination. I love it. Thank you, mayors, for an excellent panel. Mayor Strickland, Mayor Scott, Mayor Burke, Mayor Broome, wonderful time. I really enjoyed meeting all of you and working with all of you on this panel. And congratulations for all the great work that you're doing in your cities to serve your citizens with open data. Thank you all. Have a great day. And we're going to get ready to pivot into our next panel with your technologists. So thank you, mayors. Okay, so as our mayors leave, they did a great job, didn't they? And it's something about having executive sponsorship and leadership that just kind of drives initiatives like open data. So what I'd like to do is have all my technologists get ready and turn on your cameras if you could, because what we're going to do now is we're going to pivot into another panel to talk about some of the key successes in the data programs and how they're using data sets to help their respective communities. So what I'd like to do first, though, is I'm going to do a real brief bio on each of our speakers. So I'm glad to have you all here. So let me go ahead and get started with, and I'm going to start with, as soon as I get I'm going to start with Eric Romero from Baton Rouge. Eric leads the Department of Information Services for the city of Baton Rouge and parish of East Baton Rouge. As a 26-year employee with the department, he has seen the department grow from one that provided traditional IT-related services to one that leverages digital platforms to create a more efficient, effective, and responsive government. Eric has led Baton Rouge's transparency effort, which resulted in the creation of an open data portal and several applications that allow residents to easily interact with the city's wealth of data. Welcome, Eric. Next, we have Tim Moreland from Chattanooga. Tim Moreland directs the Office of Performance Management and Open Data within the city of Chattanooga. There, he has his small team works to make the city more citizen-focused and data-driven in their delivery services. Tim has a background in city and regional planning and came to the world of data through his interest in geographic information systems and open government initiatives. Welcome, Tim. Next, we have Melissa Bridges from Little Rock. Melissa is the City of Little Rock's Performance and Innovation Coordinator. In this role, she is focused on helping the city deliver efficient and first-rate services and promoting exceptional quality of life for its residents through the use of data-driven decisions. Her daily work involves helping city departments and city government as a whole measure, track, and report on the progress of major goals and initiatives, and utilize data and evidence to make policy and program decisions. She also oversees and coordinates among various performance management systems and strategies that are designed to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of service to city residents, as well as service that supports departments and operations. Welcome, Melissa. And then we have Sarah Harris from the city of Memphis. Sarah Harris is the director of the Office of Performance Management at the city of Memphis. Originally from Dover, Delaware, she graduated with a BA in economics from Furman University in 2014 and worked in economic development research for the Greater Memphis Chamber prior to joining the city in 2017. Since joining OPM, she has led the creation of the city's open data portal, the Memphis Data Hub, which relaunched in 2019 and focuses on increased resident engagement and usability. Welcome, Sarah. And we also need to welcome Eric Ogburn. Eric has been the City of New Orleans since 2011. As the Director of Enterprise Information, he oversees the web reporting, open data, and GIS initiatives by helping connect citizens and employees to city data. Welcome, Eric. All right, team, panel, we have a great panel. We have some interesting discussion questions we're going to get started with. So I want to first wish you all welcome to the panel. Your mayors are incredible. I mean, they talked about their passion for open data and how important that is for the long run. That's amazing. So let's start this. And Eric, I'm going to throw this one to you to start, okay? So technology people are not always the best in communicating to the public. How are you communicating your open data capabilities to the public? What are you doing at the city to make that happen?
Which Eric?
Yeah. Sorry, Eric. Okay, so we got to do rock, paper, scissors. No, Eric Romero.
All right. So admittedly, it's an area that we've struggled with over the years, but we recognize that we've made some great strides, especially late, as we continue to emphasize active communication around all of our digital initiatives. Usually when we get in front of an audience, whether it's virtually now, but physically pre-COVID, residents are extremely impressed by the significant amount of data and tools that we have available to them. We always start these sessions off with like raise your hand if you knew about open data or open neighborhood, and unfortunately a lot of folks haven't. But by the end of the session, they're amazed at what we have. So community meetings are one of our primary channels that we use to get the word out. So we will attend a homeowners association, church groups, council district meetings, wherever we can. We will get out in front of the public. And it does not need to be a big, large group. It can be just a couple of people, because if those couple of people tell a couple of more, over time, we're going to get the message across the whole community. And we also approach it differently to the different audiences, right? So I mentioned the civic or neighborhood associations. We always highlight our Open Neighborhood BR platform, which integrates our data sets like crime and fire and traffic and 311 and permitting in a map-based interface, because that's more important to just the common everyday, the public in their day-to-day lives. But if we're speaking to a school or a college class or a technology group, we do a deeper dive into the breadth of the data sets that we have available. We do a lot of social media outreach as well, Facebook and Twitter, but, and Mayor Broome mentioned this, Nextdoor, we've been aggressive with Nextdoor now. We regularly promote all our open data, our new open data projects through a hashtag Tech Tuesday post on all the platforms, and we've seen a lot of interest. We're seeing that Nextdoor is becoming our go-to to get the message out to the community, even when it's a tech message. Even we have a local Slack channel here, and those folks there are more tech oriented, so they're asking more questions about the type of data and just more the data type questions that the general public doesn't ask.
Eric, thank you for that. And I forgot to do one thing, panel. The mayors are gone. Right?
Yeah.
I remember what it was like to be a technologist, so I'm getting this collar opened up. All right, Sarah, you're next. So Sarah, come on in. Talk to me about how you're communicating your open data with your people.
Yeah, so that's something you mentioned that our Memphis Data Hub relaunched in October 2019, and that was something we really strived to do better. It initially launched in February of 2018, but it was literally just like a data catalog. And so you had kind of the primary page with all the metadata, and you could export it to CSV, but there was very little context around that. And so what we found is it didn't get as much engagement. People didn't really know what to do with it. You had what we kind of call our super users that know what an API is and can do that, but that's not the average citizen. And so we really focused on, okay, what do the citizens want to see and how do we present it in a format that anyone can use it? And so we have these mapping tools that map crime data, that map 311 service requests. And when we took it to neighborhoods, we tried to drill down into specific examples. So you can filter by your neighborhood boundary and then see, you know, what time are there the most, the time that cars are broken into the most. And then with this button, you can make it a heat map. And so kind of drilling down into specific examples to show some of these neighborhood groups how they can actually use it in grants, in their, you know, just communicating to their residents was really helpful. And we saw a lot more engagement that way.
Excellent, Sarah. Thank you for that. Tim, come on in. Talk to me about how you're communicating your open data with the people.
Yeah, I love this question because as open data specialists, when we talk about open data, typically what we hear from people initially is that the sky is falling and everything's going to be terrible. And what we often find is that engagement is the problem. It's not that we have too many people engaging and asking questions about data, it's that we don't have enough people. So this is the perennial problem we experience in Chattanooga, and I'm guessing other data programs as well. We try to make our data very accessible to folks. You know, not very many people are going to want to see spreadsheets. They're going to want to see data in context. So we do a lot of dashboarding and narrative to support that. A lot of visualization apps built on top of the data. And then, you know, are just trying to be playful and find what works. You know, we stole a open data chatbot from, well, we stole the idea from Kansas City of open data chatbot. So on our open data site, you can click on a link and you can have a chat with a kind of a curated bot that's going to help you find the data you're wanting to find. So we're always looking for new and interesting ways to engage folks. One thing we're very interested in is what a deeper engagement might look like. So the mayor kind of hinted on this a little bit. You know, not just open data for open data's sake and transparency, but what can we do to actually like identify a community issue and solve that with data? And I think that's the next level that we're wanting to go to for engagement.
Tim, that was excellent. And we got a chat that came in, so they love your wall there. So you have a budget for sticky squares, so you're able to get that done. I love those analysis, by the way. We used to do them all the time about giving people the opportunity to find out where everything really belonged, so you could accurately message. Well done. All right, I'm going to go next to Melissa. Melissa, talk to us. How are you communicating your open data to your people?
I think we're in Little Rock, we're doing a lot of the same things that everyone else has mentioned. And like Tim, we borrow, because I think I've borrowed from every city on this call plus other ones. I've got some verbiage on our data hub that we've recently relaunched and rescanned after we watched what Memphis did, and borrowed language from Eric Romero and Baton Rouge, and borrowed some of the layout from the Chattanooga site, and looking at the results NOLA. That was actually how we got into this whole open data thing, was looking at how they were using their blight information after Katrina and looking at stuff. And to Eric Romero's point, Nextdoor has become a huge thing in our neighborhoods, and being able to communicate directly. I see questions that come up around different neighborhoods about, hey, what's that new thing that I see being built over on the corner? And I can pop in and put a link to our planning data set and the map and say, hey, if you want to know more information, click here, go here, you can find that out. Or if I hear people talking about, like Sarah said, the cars being broken in a specific neighborhood, I can always point people back to, hey, this seems to be what's going on in your neighborhood. Here's some information around that. And at the point that Eric said about the audience, because my kids who are 13 and almost 10 will tell you they've probably heard their mama talk so much about open data that they could give the talk themselves, because they've been to neighborhood association meeting, church groups, Boy Scout, Girl Scout. You give me somebody to talk to about this and sit down and walk them through it. And I think the other part of it is the accessibility and understanding how they can ask for services from the city that then produces that data. We were talking earlier, one of the big things that always ends up happening anytime I'm out talking to a community group is folks don't necessarily understand what 311 is and how to access non-emergency services, and the fact that we've had this program for, gosh, well over a decade here in Little Rock, and the fact that we've got a mobile app. So I always stick around after the meetings and become everybody's little tech helper. And hey, let me get that app loaded and let me show you how you use that. And hey, do you remember when I was talking about on our Citizen Connect site and where you could see that? This is how this all connects back together. So I think it's just kind of a continuum of wherever we can go to tell whoever we can tell.
Well said, well said. And you know, sometimes when you actually use from other governments, because I used to do it all the time, Melissa, I was constantly watching my peers and taking the best and bringing it back home. That's the sincerest form of flattery, by the way, using the great stuff over again. Eric Ogburn, come on in, talk to me. How are you communicating your open data to your people?
One of the things that we've had a lot of success with is partnering with our Office of Neighborhood Engagement. They have a really robust program of reaching out to neighborhood leaders, to neighborhood organizations, and connecting with them. They also have, it's called a neighborhood leadership academy, where you can, neighborhood leaders, nonprofits, they can learn about sort of all facets of government. And we're always a part of that program. And it's interesting whenever we give our presentation, just sort of watching, you know, people's eyes light up. It's like, I had no idea you guys had this. And you know, really sort of, you know, suddenly the session just gets derailed. Everybody has questions about, well, what about this? What about that? And you know, you're able to say, yeah, we have that. Let me show you. You know, that's been a really good way of sort of getting a lot of the data that we have out to the people within the communities, who then sort of evangelize it, you know, amongst their circle. One of the things we're looking forward to, like in the, you know, with COVID, obviously there's much less face-to-face engagement. So our neighborhood engagement office is setting up community office hours, where you can actually request an appointment with particular departments within the city, and being able to have citizens sort of ask, like, hey, I need to know more about this, and it can be a session that can grow into, you know, one or more people, but they can ask specific questions around what they're interested in, and then neighborhood engagement brings those people in, and we're looking forward to participating in that.
Eric, thank you for that. So Melissa, I want to come back to you if I could. And I want to talk about, your mayors all talked about culture. And we talked about the fact, is the culture, is data ingrained into the culture, or is it something that is still working its way in? Talk about how you're supporting this shift in culture in regard to data in your city.
I think, and I know Mayor Scott kind of talked about it, it's been something that we've definitely struggled with in Little Rock. And for those of y'all that saw it in the chat, he mentioned the fact that we need a team, because I'm an office of one and have been an office of one since we started this work in 2015. I was actually the network security manager in the IT department at the time. And then, hey, here comes open data and performance management and innovation and everything else. And it worked its way into another full-time position that I moved into in 2017. So I've only solely been focused on this since then, And then, of course, he came into office in 2018 and moved my position from the city manager's office into the mayor's office in 2019. So I think with that reshift in the organization and having some additional focus on it, and the other part is with Zach being on here from Results for America and What Works Cities, they were able to re-engage with us and be one of our partners to be able to gather more people at the table, because I think we had a small group, maybe 10 or 15 employees that were part of our data governance group and our structure, and was trying to move this forward in each of their departments and figure out how they could use this better. But we knew that until we kind of reached that tipping point, that it wouldn't become culture. It was just this oddball little group of people over here doing this data thing, and we still aren't quite sure what they're doing. So I'd say we're Little Rock's not quite there yet, but we're moving in the right direction.
Awesome, thank you. Tim, come on in on that question for me. How are you helping support that mission to really shift the culture in regard to data for your city?
Yeah, so we like to, it's not an official saying or term, but we call it the sandwich method for culture change. So you have the top-down signal pushing the data-driven approach, and then we have a bottom-up grassroots as well. So the top-down, I think you heard from the mayor pretty strongly what that looks like. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the grassroots bottom-up. So we have a couple of different ways that we do that. We have a frontline staff training called Peak Academy, where we try to teach folks how to innovate with data and use data in their process improvements. We have a data academy where folks can sign up and get more engaged with the data. We do co-design, kind of not impromptu, but kind of short little sprints of what we call a data jam session. So a department or team identifies some issue they have, and then we just co-design and build, in real time with a solution with them. And then also we have things like our Chatanalytics project, where anybody in the city can propose a project that they want to run through our predictive analytics program. So it's open to all folks there. So that's those are kind of a lot of our kind of bottom-up signals or bottom-up work that we do to try to get that data-driven thing going through all the organization. It is not. It's a constant thing we're doing. I don't think we ever arrived. I don't know if you ever arrive. I think you're always working towards it, I would say, because it's very easy to undo as well, that's the kind of hard thing about culture, is it's really hard to get, and then it's really easy to undo. And so we're always constantly thinking about how we can ingrain that data-driven culture. The other thing is we kind of, it starts with the frame of how we talk about data and what we do data for. I think some cities, especially early on, data was kind of a shame-blame device to kind of really kind of shame people into doing the right thing. And you heard that Mayor Strickland talk about that with the CompStat model and things like that. We like to say data is a tool, and it's not the only thing you're going to look at, but it's an important thing you're going to look at. It's data as a compass, not as a grade. And so I think it's almost like we have to reassure folks that they're not going to be hit over the head with data when we first come into a team that we haven't worked with before. And there's just almost sigh of relief when we're like, oh, this data is for me and I can use it, and it's not going to be this kind of dirty thing that's used against me, but it's something I can use to grow and improve. And that's kind of the frame we've been trying to push, and that's taken a long time. Honestly, there's probably still folks who are afraid of data, but that's part of how we've been thinking about culture change and trying to get those messages out.
Tim, thank you for that. Eric Ogburn, why don't you come on in? How are you supporting that mission of the culture shift for data?
Yeah, I think similar to what Tim just said about being able to actually show departments the value of their data, not just to citizens, but to their internal operations. We've had a lot of success being able to improve performance using the data, and then obviously once you have put that together, making it public is trivial at that point. But for sort of starting off with new departments, really trying to show them that this data can work for them to solve their problems. to, to focus their budgets. That's definitely become a priority within Mayor Cantrell's tenure, that the services, the budget is tied to the services and reflected in that delivery. So, so we've been able to help facilitate that conversation within the budgeting process, as well as just the performance process. And that's been, I think, an eye-opener for a lot of departments, that it's like, okay, I get this.
Yeah, that's always amazing to see that too, right? We talk about the face of the people when they start to understand how important data is, but those operating departments, when they start to see the power of data, that's a fun transformation as well. Eric, thank you for that. Sarah, you're next. Talk to me. How are you helping support that mission and culture change?
Yeah, something Tim said reminded me of one of my favorite but very cheesy sayings, using data as a spotlight and not a hammer. And I think that's something I'm really proud about in our city, because I think we do that really well. And that really comes from the mayor. He's always made data a priority, but he's never used it in a punitive measure. And so we have those mayor's dashboard review every month. We've never missed a month in the last 3.5 years that I've been there. Obviously, they've been virtual since COVID, but that's been a priority. And so having the data, and we host those meetings, and so being able to show that data month by month. And he made the joke about the accounts payable and the friendly competition between the divisions, but in all seriousness, there were quite a few divisions that had poor performance on their accounts payable, paying their bills on time. And once they were kind of in the hot seat in a few different meetings, they came to us, were like, hey, can we dig into that and see where we're going wrong? What's the bottleneck, and what can we improve to pay our invoices faster? And so those two, police services and housing and community development, within a few months had those up into the 80s and meeting that metric. And so we've really been able to use those meetings as a way to kind of highlight the data and encourage people to ask more questions and dig in. And we've been kind of given that agency by the mayor and his support at the top.
Sarah, I loved his comment about that, because I always think about, that also costs the city money when you don't pay. I mean, there's penalty and potentially issues in regard to not paying invoices on time. So that's a money saving thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the most glamorous thing to talk about, paying bills, but his slogan has always been be brilliant at the basics. And so, we talk a lot about potholes and trash pickup and paying your bills. And they're not, the most exciting or glamorous things, but they matter to the citizens, and the citizens will let you know if there's a pothole that's been open for a week. So that we've been able to use data to kind of communicate that.
Talk about building trust there too, right? Doing the simple things definitely builds trust. Sarah, thank you for that. Eric Romero, come on in and talk to me. How are you managing that mission and helping that culture shift for data?
So Tim mentioned the bottom-up approach, and that defines my department perfectly, because we're in the basement of City Hall, so everything that we're doing is coming bottom up, right? But no, Mayor, it's so important to have support from the top, and I'm sure all the folks on the call today have that based off what we saw with their mayors, respective mayors, and Mayor Broome's no different. Her support gives us a catalyst to start, right? So it's a lot easier when we have the backing from the mayor, as opposed to the folks that are in the basement of City Hall trying to get the departments to come in line. So as you mentioned in my bio, Phil, we've transitioned over the past few years from more of a traditional IT to one that's more focused on driving strategy and projects for the entire government here. And that transition has led us to build a team of data and GIS experts who are, in my opinion, some of the best out there. My fellow department heads, they rely on those folks heavily whenever they're looking to make some sort of data-driven decision. They're coming to us for either a map or data or a combination. I think the best way that we support Mayor Broome's focus on open data is just continuing to demonstrate how more effective use of data can be a resource to our departments. So whenever a department we'll go out to a department if we are seeing something lacking. And what we're seeing now is that now they're coming to us more than we're going to them. Give an example, our Public Works Department or departments that have traditionally not used data that much, they've been coming to us more. We've been able to help them more strategically fill potholes, cut grass more effectively. We've helped in procurement by utilizing GIS for our grass spraying contracts so that the vendors know exactly how much, I guess, acreage or space that they're going to be responsible for in the contract, which previously it was all pretty much written from some guy's memory of what that path of grass was. So it's all of those things that really are helping drive the mayor's vision for transparency, in addition to our data governance committee, our open data policy that was passed in 2017, and here most recently the creation of an IT steering committee that's reviewing all the projects and policies and procurements related to technology.
Eric, thank you for that. And now we're going to pivot, panel, because everybody thinks open data is easy. Like, all you have to do is get all the data, put it in a pile and push it out online, right? I mean, that's all it is. All you do is you just get all this data and you just shove it all out online. Okay, we know that's not the case. So what is the important piece of advice you want to share with other governments about going towards and being more proficient in open data? I'm going to start with Tim.
I'm trying to think of the audience here of like, which city is it? Is this a city that is like, you know, a small city that never done open data before, or you know, it kind of depends on what advice I give given their capacity.
See, Tim, you're overthinking it. You're overthinking it. Just joking. What's that one big piece of advice? What would be the main piece of advice you would have for someone that wants to be more proficient in open data?
God, I don't know. I would say just start, right? So I think sometimes the perfect's the enemy of the good, and so I'm a big fan of starting small and iterating and improving from there, and not feeling like you have to build out the whole system and make it perfect and everything to start out with. So that would be the approach I would take. And if you are a little bit more technical, one thing that's paid dividends here is we have an automated system that just updates all our data, and so that I think I would go crazy if I had to track down data every single week or month and ask people to update their data. I couldn't handle it. And so we have a computer that does it for us and pulls the data from the core systems, and that takes a little more technical ability, but it will pay dividends, you know, in the future and make the program much more sustainable.
Tim, you know, starting small is excellent advice. I mean, you know, being a former CIO, I was constantly saying, let's get those quick wins. Let's find a way to get that thing out there that gets the momentum started, and then we can add to that thing. So I totally agree with you, Tim. Well said. Sarah, I want to come to you next. What's that big piece of advice you have for communities out there?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off Tim and in the same vein, start with your low-hanging fruit. You know, what's already in in a system, in the software that you can connect to and push it to the data site. You know, the dirty little secret of government is that some things are still on people's spreadsheets or on paper, heaven forbid. So don't start there. I mean, you're going to get discouraged really quickly if you try to figure out a way to keep all that data updated and in a usable form. So start with your low-hanging fruit, find the friendly division that wants to work for you. And then when you do have that and you push it out, just make sure to contextualize the data. I think data is only as good as the context we give it and the metadata we use to support it, because there's there can be a lot of nuances to, you know, what the data includes and doesn't include, and making sure to just put that in context for your residents, I think goes a long way in making it usable.
Sarah, great point. And I remember doing an initiative at our county, and we found 700 shadow systems that were all spreadsheets. We were doing a finance system. We had to get rid of 700 spreadsheets. It was crazy. I totally agree. All right, I want to go to Eric Romero next. Eric, what's that big piece of advice you have for other governments as they want to be more proficient in open data?
So one of the areas that we've had great success in is focusing on the quality of our data as opposed to just the quantity of it, right? So early on, when we were first trying to figure out how we would get started, we researched and even cold called several other cities with successful open data programs. And we did this for months, maybe 4 to 6 months before we even looked at one data set. And we're all very helpful in talking through what worked well for them and what maybe didn't work well. And so that we could adjust and not, fall for those same issues or challenges. We also built a very structured internal workflow that would help identify and prioritize data for publication. So it's not just some random, let's put this one or that one. It goes through a process and it's easy to come up with. So we're grading on, is it important to the administration? Is it important to the department? Is it important to the public? How often the data is updated? All these things go into a spreadsheet and then we grade it based on that to come up with, to identify which data sets are next for candidates in the Open Data VR portal. So there's a lot of steps, but we have that in there to just verify that the data that we have is really solid and will be useful for the public. I'd encourage any city that's looking to start or expand an open data program to look to other cities. I mean, look at this call right now. This five cities that came together to really put this on, collaborating because we know that we're good in certain areas. We know that we still have challenges in certain areas. And I think one thing that we all agree on is that we want to help other municipalities, strive to be more transparent and to build out open data platforms that can help their communities.
Eric, thank you for that. Eric Ogburn, you're next. Same question.
Yeah, I think starting off, one of the things that was helpful for us, and that I think is a good place to start, is make friends with your law department. The folks that handle public records requests will become your champion for opening data, because if you can make their lives easier, they will advocate on your behalf to get data open. Now, our program comes out of the IT office, same as Eric's, and it sometimes it can be seen as sort of why is IT asking me to do this? It can create a little tension there often. But if from the public records, if the legal department is saying, look, we get this request for this information 3 times a week, can we just make this an open data set? It reduces a lot of friction. Plus, they're a really good source for identifying what the public wants, right? Which is ultimately why we're all here. So I think that's one of those things that if you're just looking to start off, they can be both a champion but also a good source of information. The other thing I would say is really put together a process that allows for a partnership with the departments that you're trying to get data from. If they feel like they're not being pulled to push data, but they actually are pushing the data themselves and you're facilitating that, things just go smoother. There's also more transparency on the process. They don't feel like they're surprised. They know exactly what data is going to be published. And they can help define the metadata and all of that. It just creates a better relationship. It becomes an ongoing relationship, because that's definitely one of those things is you can start working with departments, but systems change, process change, people change, and you have to go back to those departments and maybe look at the data that you've already published again. And it's good to have those relationships already in place and a process already in place that everybody's comfortable with.
Eric, thank you for that. Melissa, same question.
I would say we probably did it backwards. Because our IT director actually had gone and purchased a platform and then handed that platform to someone that was charged with doing what Sarah said. Go find the low-hanging fruit. Go find those data sets that we know we can get our hands on real quickly, connect and push out. But there was no guide rails on that. There was no process. There was no, is this what people want to see? It was just, let's get something out to have something out. And then I got interjected into the process, and that's where some of these other points came about. And to Eric Romero's point, it was from learning from other cities and learning from people that do best practices around this and figuring out we need to take a step back and we need to go create that data inventory. We need to figure out how much paper do we still have, Sarah? How much of this information is sitting in the engineer's head and isn't even on a spreadsheet to have 700 spreadsheets to go get rid of. And I'd say we've done that a few different times, because if you look at our data site now, it looks nothing like what it did when we first purchased it in 2014, and then all the iterations that we've done since then. And I think another big point that everybody said was building in the context. And I've seen some of that come through in the questions from the folks that are watching, making sure to be able to figure out how we can tell either our residents or our other employees, because that's one of the things that I try and do is have training sessions for employees, because they don't even know these tools are available, much less our residents, and put context around it to say, hey, remember when we were having that conversation that you said you got tasked by your department director that you've got to work with this department that you're not used to working with? Well, here's a common data set that might be able to help facilitate some of that conversation and trying to figure out those winnable situations around that has been helpful to us too.
Great point. Thank you. All right, now we're in the last 5 minutes of our panel. So in 30 seconds or less, this is the hard part, 30 seconds or less, we're going to start with Eric Romero. What's the future hold for open data?
I think that the future is bright for open data. The pandemic has only escalated the growth shift from physical to online service delivery. That more and more residents are getting comfortable with technology, with getting comfortable in receiving or using information online. So I see that I think there's going to be continued growth in all things technology, and that's one of the, I guess, one of the pluses of the that came out of the pandemic. There were so many negatives, but the plus was to drive the public more towards technology.
Excellent. Eric Ogburn, 30 seconds or less. What's the future?
I think it's I think the future is now. In some ways, it's really putting the data into tools, whether it's dashboards or applications that make the data useful for citizens, and really putting that into the hands of residents, so that whatever issue they're looking to resolve, whether it's in our case road work, to the where streets are flooding, to looking at rental assistance, is really putting that information in an easy to use, easy to consume.
Eric, thank you. Tim, 30 seconds or less. What's the future of open data?
I love what Eric said. I agree with that completely. I think one thing that's going to be more of an issue moving forward is privacy. So as more and more data becomes available, you with each additional data set, you increase the risk of people being able to have their privacy compromised. And so we have to think a little bit more holistically about that, especially as more data and sensor data starts to become opened up.
Well said. Melissa, 30 seconds or less. What's the future of open data?
I agree with everything that everyone said. And I think, again, given the pandemic this last year and the fact that my mom will send me screenshots of charts and graphs and, oh, did you see case counts? It's more pervasive in our society because everyone's watched the Johns Hopkins dashboard this past year to see what the numbers were going to be. So we've got to make it accessible, usable, and Tim, great point, privacy and equity have got to be part of the conversation that we have now.
Well said, Melissa. Sarah, 30 seconds or less. What's the future?
Yeah, so I think not only are people getting more comfortable with it, but I think they're also expecting it now. And I think the pandemic did a lot in that regard. And so I think the future is more engagement, more data sharing, and just building off the momentum that we have.
All right, so panelists, I did it to your mayors. I'm going to do it to you all too. One word that you want to leave the audience with in regard to open data. Sarah, I'm going to come right back to you. What's your one word?
I'll go with accountability.
Accountability. Eric Ogburn.
Iterate.
Iterate. Melissa.
Collaborate.
Collaborate. Tim.
Fun.
Fun. Eric Romero.
Passionate.
Passionate. You were a great panel. I really enjoyed working with all of you today. Your mayors are incredible. You're doing incredible work to support the mission and changing the culture. And I'm a big data geek myself. I think data is the future. I think data is the foundation from which all decisions are made and all successes come from. So I appreciated the opportunity to be with you all. You know, congratulations on Open Data Day with your Southern Cities 2021. Great program. I want to thank you all for being here. And Eric said I should wrap it up, so I'm going to do that. Everybody have a great day. Stay safe and continue doing great things. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.